Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting for November 22nd.
Bit of an echo?
That wasn't just me hearing that then, was it?
No.
Okay.
Everyone needs to mute, that's why.
Yeah. If you're not speaking, if you could mute, that may help that feedback.
Okay, so again, welcome everybody to our council meeting tonight. Our first thing on the agenda is to, of course, adopt the agenda. And a recommendation here that the agenda for the November 22nd, 2021 regular meeting of council be accepted and passed. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to disclosure of pecuniary interest. So on anything on tonight's agenda, I have none to declare. Dan?
No.
Lisa?
No.
Steve?
I do not, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I don't think we have Sherry with us yet, do we? Okay. Next item we have, and hopefully the technical difficulties aren't going to make it too impossible, but we have Councillor Steve O'Neill for the County Council update. Welcome, Steve. Can you hear me, Steve? You're on mute, by the way.
No, I couldn't actually, Mayor Lennox. I don't know what's going on. I didn't move to the country, so I was hoping my internet wasn't bad. Seems to be tonight for whatever reason, but we'll try and go through. Good evening, everyone. I see by your agenda, you're going to be busy this evening with budget matters. So I'll staff to the tax levy increase of 2% in 2022. All aware increase of for fuel materials and nearly everything else. Council's channeling forward will be county's preliminary 10-year financial plan show the increases.
Steve, can I hold you up for a second? Steve, can you hear me? Steve, you're really
3.8%, and as
Steve,
you're really going to do. I don't know if I was cut off there for a while or not.
Yeah, Councillor
Steve,
O'Neill.
you're really choppy. I'm wondering if maybe you should disconnect and try reconnecting.
2023 through 2026, 4 bridges on County Road 109 just east of Arthur will be replaced. Each bridge is budgeted between $3.8 and $5.1 million. Another thing we're doing every year, one new OPP officer is being hired on, and the growth throughout the county requires us to do this. This is the final week for leaf and yard waste pickup by the county in 2021. A new pilot program has been started to pick up organic green bin waste material from industrial, commercial, and institutional businesses along the Highway 6 corridor between Arthur and Guelph. The Smart Cities Food Future Joint County and City of Guelph project was the catalyst to start this pilot. It's going to run for 3 months. The Recycle Coach app has a new image search function that has been added to the lookup tool, which allows users to search and learn how to properly dispose of thousands of items. This new feature allows users to take and upload a picture of any item, and the app is able to identify the item and give advice on how and where to dispose of it. I encourage you to use the Recycle Coach app. It reminds you of your waste pickup schedule each week, among other things. Another Smart Cities Our Food Future project is cybersecurity and agriculture workshops. During the last year of lockdowns, many local farms took their businesses online. With this growing connectivity comes the responsibility of managing more data and the risk of being vulnerable to cybersecurity threats. To support our farmers' knowledge of these issues, the county is offering 2 one-hour workshops on cybersecurity and agriculture. The first is being held tonight, 6:30 to 7:30. So it's going on now at the Wellington County Museum and Archives. The second being held next Monday, the 29th, from 6:30 to 7:30 at the Harrison Library. The workshops will be run by Community Safety Knowledge Alliance. The county will also be offering 10 workshop participants a follow-up visit from a local cybersecurity consultant. These on-farm visits will offer one-on-one coaching in best practices and address site-specific questions. The events are free, but pre-registration is required, and you can sign up at wellington.ca/internet. That's pretty near all I've got. I know you're going to be busy tonight, like I say, but I want to wish township staff and council Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. And the next time we do a county update, we're doing it in person. And thanks, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions.
Councillor McCabe?
Thanks for that, Councillor O'Neill. Could you repeat kind of about the first maybe 2 paragraphs? Because you're extremely choppy just when you were going through some of the numbers there. If you don't mind repeating yourself.
Anything budget related, Steve? Can you hear me, Steve O'Neill? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I think it looks like we've lost him. Okay, so I guess hope nobody else had questions for Councillor O'Neill. Okay, well, I think maybe we better move on. Next up, we have a presentation from our Director of Finance, Adam McNabb. Welcome, Adam. And you've got a few things to go through, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. Give me a moment here. I'll just start sharing my screen. Hopefully that is up for council's review now.
Yep.
Very good. So good evening, Mayor and members of council. Pleased to be here this evening to present the draft 2022 budget as prepared by staff on behalf of the Township of Wellington North. As in prior years, the aim of the annual budget is to focus and deliver on the values of council for the Township of Wellington North. An in-depth review of interfunctional transfers was conducted in September and October of 2021. And the results have been incorporated in the results you're about to see. Budget templates were sent to department heads on September 3rd, 2021. The treasurer had held meetings with department heads during September, October, and November as required. And this represents the first meeting with staff and council, with additional meetings scheduled for December 13th and January 10th, 2022. In terms of 2022 budget guidelines, township staff have frozen most operating account budgets at 2021 levels unless cost pressures were otherwise documented. Additionally, wage and salary budgetary increases have been incorporated and vary by department. Group health and benefit costs have decreased from prior years. This is largely driven by a marketing undertaken by the plan administrator Mosey and Mosey in 2021. On behalf of the participating municipalities within the county consortium. Municipal insurance renewal rates are anticipated to increase by 20%, and this is based on guidance by the township's insurance broker. And utilities are anticipated to increase by 2% in 2022, and the budgeted expenses have been adjusting accordingly. In terms of other 2022 budget impact items, Conservation Authority budgets have not yet been received. However, for the purposes of 2022, provisions have been made based on expectations, and anticipated increases are currently set at 7% across the board. Also, minimal municipal service level changes have been anticipated for 2022. However, the lasting impacts of COVID remain uncertain. A quick overview here as it pertains to growth versus reassessment. Growth is defined as new assessment, and it has no impact on the current taxpayer. So during 2021, Wellington North has realized an estimated real assessment growth of 1.48%. This compared to 2020 growth of 1.52% and 2019 at 1.53%. Property assessment for the 2022 and 2023 tax years will remain unchanged. Senior levels of government have prioritized stability for property taxpayers and municipalities. So the valuation that was used in 2021 and that assessment is predicated on January 1, 2016 valuations will remain in effect per the fall economic statement. I've prepared the operating budget comparison between 2021 and 2022, stripping out key items to provide a neutral comparison between years. Of note, there are no contributions to reserve or reserve funds have been incorporated. Also, no contributions to capital have been entertained for the purposes of the operating to operating comparison. And lastly, revised interfunctional transfers for 2022 have been implemented. However, no material differences are being proposed. Looking at the operating budget by FIR category, beginning with general government segment, you will note that the council segment increase is largely attributed to a new line item being added to support continued volunteer engagement, that of $10,000. And administration is up sharply to accommodate additional resource support for asset management initiatives and 2022 election costs, which when fully loaded will be supported by a transfer from reserves. When looking at the protection services segment, Wellington North Fire Services expenses are up to support specialized software licensing costs, contract dispatch services, and increases in interfunctional transfer allocations. Protective inspection and control revenues are up based on anticipated increases for permitting revenues and are partially offset by increased wage and benefit costs associated with the onboarding of a new building inspector. In these next three segments, you will note that the roads expenses are up marginally and are largely driven by contract expense increases, largely revolve around dust control, marketplace cost pressures for materials, and township-wide cost pressures, most notably insurance. Parks and recreation expense increases are largely driven by interfunctional transfer allocation changes, wage and benefit increases, program cost pressures for cleaning and maintenance, and township-wide cost pressures, again, predominantly in the insurance and hydro expense lines. And lastly, when looking at the planning and development segment, you will see no material changes are being proposed. So in aggregate, total anticipated operating expense increases of $245,000 or a 4.7% operating budget increase. So building on the operating budget discussion, reserve and reserve fund net transfers are being proposed to maintain alignment with policy and to fund 2022 election requirements. Year over year, net taxation reserve contributions are down due to election transfer and reduction based on 2021 organic growth figures. However, are up overall due to the reduced debt servicing costs in the wastewater segment. Looking now at the capital program being proposed by staff for 2022, the council directed projects are largely carried forward from 2021. Wells Street extension remains contingent upon development influence. The Arthur BIA streetscaping is largely complete, but still requires an allocation of project costs, which are still trickling in. And the Mount Forest Pool project costs represent detailed design only and has not been allocated a funding source in this budget iteration. Staff will be seeking direction on this particular item. Incomplete 20 and 20 IT initiatives are also being carried forward for 2022 and focus on continued IT initiatives for the township. namely contingency dollars to facilitate recommendations from the IT service delivery review conducted in 2020. Development-driven projects are all 2021 carry forwards and are again being presented here for council information, but remain funded from prior years. The administration group is proposing 2 projects. The Mount Forest Downtown Wi-Fi project is a straight carry forward from 2021, and the work order management system is being proposed for 2022 to facilitate continued maturation of the township's asset management practices as recommended in the 2021 asset management plan update. Building and property are proposing 2 new projects for 2022, the acquisition of a pickup truck and the replacement of the flat roof for the Gene Weber reading room. Wellington North Fire Services is proposing 4 projects. 2 are continuations of multi-year projects previously approved by council, those being bunker gear and the fire hose replacement projects, and 2 new projects for 2022, those being the site planning for the Mount Forest Fire Hall and the acquisition of a new pickup truck. From a roads fleet perspective, we see 2 carry forwards, those being the 2007 Volvo and 2010 pickup truck. These items have been ordered but have not yet arrived. The remainder of the projects are those being proposed for 2022 and include the replacement of the fuel tanks at the works yards, installation of dash cameras and radio replacements for fleet vehicles, and other replacement equipment purchases. 3 new bridge projects are being proposed for 2022, those being on Side Road 3 East, Line 6, and Side Road 13. Reconstruction design projects continue for 2022, but also include 2 new additions, those being Fergus Street North between Durham and Birmingham, and Preston Street North between Smith and Donville. Full reconstruction projects for 2022 have been identified as Donville between Conestoga and Preston, and Queen Street East in Mount Forest, for which the township has secured a connecting link grant to partially fund. Additionally, the township has submitted an application for the continuation of Smith Street and Arthur and will be contingent upon grant approval. 2022 works on this project would be limited to detailed design with construction slated for 2023. The gravel-based rebuild projects have been identified as Side Road 13 and Side Road 9 West, which in this slide here, you will note we erroneously referenced Side Road 9 East, so apologies for that. It is also anticipated that these 2 projects will require 3 years to complete. However, what is being presented herein is only the 2022 estimated contributions. The 2022 Rural Resurfacing Program is being directed to 3 projects, those being Side Road 5 West, Line 12, and Side Road 7 East. The 2022 Urban Paving Program is being comprised of 6 projects, including London Road North, Albert Street, Birmingham Street East, Church Street North, and Durham Street East, and additionally Preston Street South. Other transportation services projects include a mix of carry forward and new items for 2022. The pedestrian safety measures, Mount Forest Drive turn lane and works yard upgrades are carry forwards from 2021. And the newly proposed projects are the sidewalk construction projects for Princess Street and bordering the Victoria Cross Public School, along with 3 assessment studies to aid in the township's asset management data maturation initiatives. Sanitary sewer capital works for 2022 include contributions to the previously mentioned engineering design projects. Additionally, contributions to the reconstruction projects on Queen Street East in Donville, as well as some independent sewer projects, including project works being suggested at the treatment plants and pumping stations presented by Aqua, as in previous years, and a couple of studies, wastewater treatment plant blower study, and the Mount Forest wastewater treatment plant re-rating, rounding out the sanitary capital ask for 2022. Waterworks will also see contributions to the similar engineering design projects previously discussed. and contributions to the reconstruction projects on Queen Street East and Donville are also being proposed for the waterworks segments, as well as some independent water projects carried forward from 2021, including the water supply study in Arthur, the allocation of costs pertaining to the George Smith Street in Arthur, the Mount Forest standpipe rehabilitation, and some new projects for 2022, including the replacement of a valve maintenance and vac trailer, a water meter study, and the acquisition of a new pickup truck. Parks and Recreation segment is suggesting the continuation of a number of multi-year projects, namely signage, trail development, the Brent Barnes Memorial Skate Park, the Arthur Ball Diamond safety netting, and the completion of the Red Clay Diamond in Mount Forest. Being proposed for 2022 are the rehabilitation efforts in the Arthur Community Center, for which a grant application has been submitted through the Federal Green and Inclusive Community Building Program, and will be contingent upon a successful acceptance to that program. However, council should be aware that a recent structural inspection has identified areas of the community center roof that will require attention. The need to pursue restorative action in the near future, even if unsuccessful with the GICB grant funding, is possible. Additionally, I would draw attention to the Arthur Community Center works as a multi-year project, with the 2022 the 2022 contribution only representing the perceived 2022 requirement. The total project cost is estimated to be just north of $3 million, with the total ownership contributions estimated to be in the vicinity of $620,000 if successful with the GICB grant. The Campbell DeVore Park has been included as well as a 2022 budget ask, and it should be noted that new information available to staff has changed the 2022 budget ask from $130,000 shown here to $150,000 to more accurately depict project costs for 2022. And rounding out the Parks and Recreation segments are the replacement of an ice surfacing machine, Mount Forest Playground surface enhancements, enhancement to the Mount Forest Fairgrounds, and the development of a trails master plan. So looking at the 2022 capital program in aggregate and in comparison to prior years, we see that the total program being proposed is very similar to last year in scale and down sharply from the high water mark of 2019. However, distribution between service segments is slightly different. From a funding model standpoint, the significant year-over-year changes reside in the utilization of levy dollars to fund levy-related programs versus grant, reserve, and reserve fund dollars. Additionally, certain assumptions have been made in this preliminary budget draft to show potential impact on tax levy and gain insight into council's direction on priority projects, levy setting direction, and the comfort level with the utilization of reserve and reserve funds to facilitate the 2022 capital program. Also worth noting is that this iteration, approximately $650,000 of projects remain unfunded. Just a slide here, the purpose of which is twofold. Staff wanted to identify for council's awareness the scope of all projects that were given consideration for 2022, which totaled approximately $18.7 million, and to demonstrate that staff have given consideration to prioritization and reasonability of the 2022 capital ask of council to facilitate the capital program. This slide is being presented to help inform council's decision around the utilization of reserve and reserve funds to facilitate the 2022 capital program and levy setting direction for the township into 2022. As can be seen, the reserve and reserve funds are up from a close at the end of 2020 of about $16.1 million to a Q3 2021 close balance of $21.6 million. The largest contributor for the increase are the proceeds from the FCM Green Municipal Fund associated with the Phase 1 Arthur wastewater treatment plant enhancements. So when combining the proposed operating budgets, policy mandated and proposed net transfers to reserve and reserve funds from operating budget and the 2022 capital program as presented, the levy impact would be just above 20%. And the assumptions to get to this result are, unless otherwise identified, all levy-related capital projects have been funded by contributions to capital. A $900,000 contribution from the OCIF program has been assumed in this iteration, However, recent announcements would suggest that more may be available for 2022. The current capital model still has some items listed as unfunded, those largest contributors being the Mount Forest Pool detailed design, the Wells Street extension, which is again contingent upon perceived development need, and minor budget overruns on reconstruction design works. Also worth noting is that prior year contributions from reserve and reserve funds were $2.39 million. And the current model for 2022 suggests contributions of only $347,000 in its current state. So at this time, staff are requesting direction from council on the following items. Direction regarding the target levy for 2022, any requested additions or omissions from the capital program for 2022, and guidance on the utilization of reserve and reserve funds to reduce contributions to the capital program from the levy, and any other items that council feels should be further incorporated or omitted from the 2022 draft budget as presented. Thank you. I think that's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Open the floor for questions. There's a lot of information presented there, Adam, so I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Who'd like to start us off? Go ahead, Dan. You're muted, Dan.
Sorry about that. Okay, a couple of things. What happened? I thought a few months ago, we were kind of discussing quite thoroughly, or seemed to be discussing quite thoroughly, about the works, a new works building or operations building in Arthur. And I don't see anything in there in regards to that. So has that, what have we done with that? Or are we still, is it still on the table, or has it been kind of left? I guess just, yeah, where are we with it?
Matt, go ahead.
Yep, thanks, Mayor Lennox, and through you to Councillor Yake. At present, staff is just working on determining locations for the operations center, at which point we would bring that through to council. It just, that hasn't happened today.
Go ahead, Dan.
All right, so we're not, I mean, we're still looking down the road at this operations center. This isn't going to be in the near future, it looks like, to a certain degree. Two other things. In regards to pedestrian safety measures, I saw that was in there. And you don't have to give it to me right now, but maybe somebody could send us what that includes. The number of pedestrian safety measures. It was $60,000, I think, or $56,000 in there. And the last thing I wanted to do was ask about the ice resurfacer replacement in Mount Forest. Are we, or would we be looking at new technology such as an electric machine? So those are my questions for now.
Okay. Matt, you want to tackle some of those?
Yep, through you, Mayor Lennox. Just the ice resurfacer that's proposed is not an electric model, but staff can take a look at that as an option. I think an electric model is more expensive, but the model that's proposed would kind of be a replacement for what's there as far as fuel type.
Okay. Go ahead, Dan.
Just, I guess, in regards to that, I guess, you know, we've had some discussion in regards to electric vehicles, in regards to our own truck fleet. So I'd like to see us look at it, see if it is a possibility, see if it's something that we have an appetite for. It would certainly show some, you know, it would show some positive thinking moving forward here, I think, with an electric ice machine.
Adam, go ahead.
And just circling back, Councillor Yake, to your question with regards to pedestrian safety measures, those project dollars are carried forward from prior years. And the notion was that we would maintain those dollars into 2022, understanding that there's still continued conversations with regards to the north end of Mount Forest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Steve, go ahead.
All right, excuse me, thanks. And through you, Mayor, to Adam or to Matt, or maybe even, yeah, I guess Chris is on. Sorry, the fire chief is on. How old are the pickup trucks that we have for the fire department right now? I didn't think they were that old. But I know one had the life driven out of it pretty hard.
Through you, Mayor Lennox, to Councilor McCabe, the pickup truck that we're proposing to replace is 7 years old.
Okay.
So what our plan is, with the new decontamination guidelines that we have to work on, having that pickup truck replaced, which Marco drives, then that would leave a pickup truck in the fire hall to help us bring back contaminated gear and bottles and all that stuff that we now have to clean and that kind of thing. So the original proposal was to replace it at 7 years, and this would do that, plus give us an option for decontamination guidelines that have come out.
And so would we hold on to that truck that's the 7-year-old truck then? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's correct. That's what would be the plan, is to keep it in the Mount Forest station so that they have a truck to be able to transport firefighters and contaminated gear back and forth from scenes.
Okay, thank you. And I would be remiss by not asking, and if I can continue, sorry, Andy,
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
about Wells Street, and it was kind of in conjunction, it touched on what Dan had brought up as well, just with regards to the public works yard that we're hoping to maybe build in the next couple of years. And would this be a forerunner to that, like doing the work on Wells Street from Highway 6 to Domville, or is this just for access to hopefully more industrial land?
Mayor Lennox, not sure if you can see me.
Yeah, I can, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah. Wells Street has been identified by council for a number of years.
Yep.
Two primary items around Wells Street. One is to, as you've indicated, Councillor McCabe, promote the opportunity to develop already identified industrial lands in that area. And the other is to establish an alternate route for traffic so that they didn't go through downtown Arthur. We don't own land out there, so I think it would be an incorrect assumption to tie the Arthur Works Yard to the extension of Wells Street. I think those two are very separate items.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
That's it for me for now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I have one here with regard to the operating budget. It's been a tumultuous last nearly 2 years, and our recreation revenue has been all over the place a little bit with the upheaval with the pandemic. What kind of assumptions went into creating the revenue estimates for recreation for 2022 budget? Go ahead, Adam.
Through you, Mayor Lennox, and to you, I suppose the recreation revenues remain static in terms of the assumptions for 2022. Taking a conservative approach, with some uncertainty still remaining around COVID. So if memory serves, and perhaps correct me if I'm wrong, either Matt or Tom, those revenues represent a 50% reduction from the 2020 mark from a budget perspective.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was, maybe I wasn't listening clearly, but can you just go back over that again? What was the difference from 2020?
A 50% reduction.
50% below 2020 revenues.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other questions? Dan, go ahead.
Just one in regards to the roads fleet. I see that we have the 2017 Holder sidewalk machine, 2017 unit, which isn't very old, and I understand that there's been a number of issues with that machine since we bought it. Would we get rid of this machine, or are we just going to keep it and buy a replacement with it?
Okay, Adam, go ahead. Or sorry, Matt.
Yep. Through you, Mayor Lennox, to Councillor Yaake. The intent would be to get rid of the 27 Holder while it still has some salvage value. But our experience to date has been that unit has been difficult to keep in operation and maintained.
So just as a follow up to that, Matt, so it would be replaced with something other than a Holder unit, I'm assuming?
That would be the intent.
Okay. Other questions?
No.
Okay. Now I look at the total levy requirement in the proposed in the budget here at, you know, netting out to 19% and change. And, you know, I'm glad I was sitting down when I first read it. So I guess the question then becomes, you know, what, you know, you mentioned, Adam, that there's potential for more OCIF funding to help offset some of that. There's the potential for using some reserve funds to offset some of that. Do you have a crystal ball sense of what you think that's going to look like on those two items, and where that might end, where we might end up? And I guess what I'm trying to drill down to is, if we're going to get this into a range that I think our taxpayers can live with, how much do we need to pare out of the capital budget? Go ahead, Adam.
The preliminary announcements as it pertains to OCIF would suggest that the amounts for 2022 are being doubled. However, that's not necessarily a one-to-one correlation in terms of what our allocation will be for the 2022 calendar year. So in terms of crystal ball, I can't say definitively that it will be twice what we received in 2021, which was just north of $1 million. I'm optimistic that it would be significantly up from the $1 million mark, but uncertainty still remains. And in terms of contributions from reserve funds, just to kind of put it into context, a bullet in the slide that had suggested that the contributions from 2021 from a levy perspective were about $2.39 million. However, in this iteration, we've only assumed approximately $347,000, so a near $2 million reduction, just to kind of elicit a response with regards to what the levy impact would be if it was all funded from levy dollars. So to put it into context, if we were to up that contribution to a similar amount to that from what it was in 2021, you would be looking at a tax levy increase of in the vicinity of 2%.
Including all the capital projects that have been funded in this iteration?
Correct. However, the caveat to that being that there would still remain unfunded ones unless we would have to have appointed funding source for those. So we would in effect, to fund the unfunded items would have to go to near $2.6 million.
Okay. Okay. Other questions, comments?
I've done for now.
I guess one of the things I was expecting to see more of than I did was longer term development type projects. You know, we've talked extensively about water towers, wastewater treatment, those types of things, and I didn't really see a whole lot of development driven projects for 2022. It just it probably is just out a year or so, but just Mike, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox, a couple things I wanted to touch on as it relates to the budget. We've had this conversation among staff and amongst council. Obviously, the last 2 years have been very demanding as it relates to our staff contingent. And I'm looking at 2022 as being kind of a reset year for all of our staff. And we need to get some resources on board and amongst our staff so that we can gear up towards doing some of the major development related type projects that you've identified, Mayor Lennox. We did a very good job as a staff in keeping capital programs running throughout COVID, but we did it at a significant demand of our staff. 2022 is going to be, we're still in the midst of this and still trying to work our way through some of these things. So the focus is trying to maintain, as we have around that $15 million mark. We think we can accomplish that, but going beyond that in 2022 is asking too much at this point from not from a finance standpoint, but from a staffing standpoint. We don't have the resources to go beyond that at this point, but we're bringing them on board, and we anticipate that will bode well as we get closer to 2023.
Okay, thank you. Dan, go ahead.
So are we trying to shoot for a target? Are we looking, or is that what you're looking for, Adam? I guess, kind of in the last slide in regards to the target levy for 2022. So are we looking for a percentage or a number?
Go ahead, Adam.
Through you, Mayor Lennox, I would suggest the answer is twofold. We would be seeking guidance from council as it pertains to what a palatable levy increase would be for 2022, and also determine whether or not council would be comfortable funding the program in its current state beyond the levy request to hit the capital program for 2022.
So one of those, Councillor Yake, is a percentage, the levy percentage that council is comfortable with. And then the other question becomes, how do we fund the balance of the capital program? And I haven't heard a lot of feedback from council, but I don't think there would be significant displeasure from council if the utilization of reserves and reserve funds this year was very comparable to last year. As Adam indicated, our reserve balances are still quite healthy, around 21 million at the end of the third quarter. So that's afforded us some flexibility around those pieces. There's a couple, the one item relates to the pool piece specifically. And I think my suggestion, and it's a suggestion for council to consider, is there's a tax rate stabilization figure there. There's other avenues that we can explore from a funding standpoint as we move forward, but as a backup plan, maybe that's something that council wants to support, so we can continue to move forward with that. But I do think the pool, assuming we're successful with the Arthur Community Center application, would then become the next top recreation project, which funding grant opportunities tend to be geared towards. So I think there's some hope around that, but the design work itself probably will not be front of the line. The actual construction would be probably closer to that. But I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. I think basically from a staff perspective, if we know what a levy percentage increase year over year that council's comfortable with, whether it's CPI, whether it's something else, that would be great. And that if council is supportive of us from a staffing standpoint, looking at utilizing reserve funds in a similar fashion to what we did last year, which was around the 2.3, 2.4 million mark. Adam's nodding. So I think I'm pretty close with my numbers there.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Dan.
So if we just started with a percentage and we said, okay, we're looking at 2.5 to 3%. Let's just use that as a number. Okay, and then I guess we all need to be kind of supportive of the same number. Then Adam can take it from there. Pretty much, right?
Go ahead, Adam.
Yes, I could. Again, with the caveat that provided that council is agreeable to fund the remaining capital balance from reserve and reserve funds to get to that value.
Okay. Mike, go ahead.
And just not to overcomplicate, but we've talked about funding from reserve funds. If there are particular projects that, based on their nature, that council thinks we should explore debt, that's another conversation too. We haven't looked at that for the projects, the capital projects that have been identified, but it is an opportunity, and we all know, or most of us recognize, that debt rates are at a very low. And so for some of these longer term type projects, we don't have a lot really identified in this capital, but it is something that we could explore as well if that's a route that council wants to go, as opposed to relying exclusively on reserve and reserve funds to fund the capital program.
Okay. So Dan, just to follow up a little bit on your comment, is that a range that you're comfortable with? You were talking. Just reiterate what you've said, if you don't mind, and if you're comfortable with that.
Well, I guess for us to really see, we need to maybe a couple different examples. We need to see what 1%, 2%, and 3% increase would do. I mean, that would make it a little easier for us to see, and how those numbers would all work out at that point in time. But I'm comfortable. I mean, 2 to 2.5%, I think is a comfortable number for me. But again, we've got a lot of things on the table. We've got a lot of things that need to get done over the next few years. So, but again, we have to be aware of what our community and the world is going through, or has gone through in the last 2 years. So, I'm comfortable with that number, 2 to 2.5. But again, I'd like to see what those numbers, maybe 2 or 3 different options would do.
So just to be clear, Dan, when you say 2 to 2.5%, is that on top of the increased revenue coming from growth? Is that the way?
I
know in the past we often in previous years talked about 3.5% to 4%, but then growth came out of that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that comes back to that 2.5%, pretty close to where
Yeah.
we're talking about. I just want to make sure we're both talking the same language.
Well, yeah, we need to be doing that, but I guess we could see it both ways, couldn't we?
Sure.
I mean, I don't, I know this is just the kind of the first kick at the cat here, but I think we need to see a couple different options for us to be able to kind of come up with a number. And whether it's growth related or not, then so be it.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, I would echo what Councillor Yake said. I would be a little more comfortable to see what kind of scenarios, Adam, you can mix up with your crystal ball there as well. And just to see what numbers would go with what percentages, so to speak, with the growth and without the growth. I would give me a sharper view of what needs to stay in and maybe what needs to be brought out of the budget if we have to hit a certain number.
Okay. Lisa, you have some thoughts?
No real wisdom, but that does make a lot of sense. I'm kind of comfortable with an increase somewhere around the CPI. I know the CPI is a lot higher than it's been in the past. But we can't go backwards either. So. Yeah.
Okay, Steve?
Just going back, these are kind of touched on there, and then what Mike, you had said earlier, this is still fairly ambitious budget. Do we have the staff resources for it? I know you said the financial can be there, or can be arranged to be there, but given what what's in front of us right now, is it too much to expect, or is it on par with what you expected it to be, or are there, like, when we were talking, when Mayor Lennox had mentioned the water towers and etc., getting those pushed out a little bit further, is this too big of a bite?
Mike?
That was directed to me, I think, Councilor Cape. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Mike. Yes.
Yeah, no, I through you, Mayor Lennox, it's still a significant commitment from a staff perspective. Some of the things, the Arthur wastewater treatment plant specifically was a very labor intensive project, but it also had an administrative burden on staff. So that one's, hopefully mostly behind us. I think what we've identified, and Councillor Yake's comment around the Arthur Works Yard is not unheard by me. I'm ambitious about what, moving ahead on some of these things that have lingered for 20 plus years. I want to do them too. But I also want to be respectful of our staff. So we're at a number that we think we can accomplish. And yeah, when we leave this meeting, and if, we have support from council that, yeah, the overall budget program that we're proposing, including the capital, is what we want to accomplish, I'm going to circle back with the department heads and say, hey, we've got support of council around this budget. Are we going to be able to accomplish it? And if we can't, then the next iteration you're going to see is going to be less. And I think our staff's earned that opportunity to scale back if because of what they've been through and what they've been able to accomplish in the last 2 years.
Mhm.
I would just add too that to some extent, I think we need to ask our local taxpayers to contribute more than they did last year, regardless of what we're able to do with our capital program too, to some extent. Because I mean, even it's just at the last meeting, we heard about the capital spending shortfall that we have with regard to those core assets from an asset management perspective, and making sure that we have those dollars in the future is also going to be important as well. So I'm okay with kind of what's being proposed in terms of a levy increase, and I'd be happy to look at the capital program, especially if we can get more information with regard to the OCIF type thing. And I'm comfortable proceeding with reserves, but I think we need to make sure that we are looking to the future as well as not just to 2022. And to me, that means that we've got to be, inflation, we all hope is, or CPI, we all hope it's an aberration this year, that, it's running high, and that we hope it'll come back down to earth. But if it doesn't, then that's going to put more demands on people going forward as well. So, I mean, if we can use reserves and come up with a way to fund these projects, I think for the most part, I'm happy to proceed with them. And when we start looking at 19% right out of the gate, it scares me to think, well, how can we cut that much stuff out? But we do have, a nice flow of dollars into reserves, so we can afford to take some out of reserves as well. So I'm not sure entirely what staff's hope was with this version of the budget, but I think the next iteration is kind of what I'm looking forward to see, are there still things we need to pare out of a capital budget to make the numbers match? And, I'd be happy to take staff's recommendations around some of those things as well. Because obviously staff are closer to the operational things day to day and can better prioritize some of those things too. So, I say let's use reserves as we have in the past. Let's go to, 2.5% over the growth target that we know we've got from 2021, and see where it ends up. And then we can, assuming the process is the way I understand it, we're going to see this again in 2 to 3 weeks. And then if we need to make further revisions, we can do that before January to get us to where we need to go. Mike?
One other comment I'd make, Mayor Lennox, and for all of council, between now and the next iteration of the budget, you're also going to be engaged in the development charges conversation. And Mayor Lennox, for you specifically, based on your previous comment, you're going to see development charge related projects that are very aggressive over the next 7 years, which is very daunting. And we don't necessarily see it as part of this budget, but over the next 7 years, the projects that have been identified as part of the development charges program are very aggressive, and reflect the amount of growth that we anticipate in Wellington North in that time frame. So there's two pieces at play, and that will be at play. And one of the alternate, as it relates to kind of your comments about where are the development projects, you're going to see them there. And there's a lot of them. Yeah, that's something that's, again, reflects a lot of the things that we're dealing with from a staff perspective as it relates to development applications, knowing where the growth is, where it's coming from, where it's going to go, really ties into the development charges study and the information that council is going to see in the next couple of weeks. Less than that, I guess.
Other questions, comments from specifically from members of council at this point?
I was just going to say thanks to Adam and all the staff for putting this first iteration together.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Dan, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna, the same thing, I was just gonna say thanks to you, Adam, and your staff for putting it together. It's always tough to get that first draft out in front of council, but and I think we'll see, we'll see some different numbers when you come back in a couple of weeks. And I think that, certainly give me the opportunity or better idea of to where we're going to go and where we need to get to. So no, thanks again.
Adam, go ahead.
Just a quick thank you to council and the remainder of staff who were the largest contributors to this. Really appreciate your time and the direction.
Okay. So I was just going to come back to you, Adam, and ask if there's anything more guidance you need at this point.
No, I believe we've got our marching orders and look forward to chatting again on the 13th.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Karen, do we need a motion to receive this?
I don't believe so. It's just presentation.
Okay. So again, thanks, Adam, and all the team for putting that together. We'll move on to adoption of the minutes of council and public meeting. So I have a recommendation here that the minutes of the regular meeting of council and the public meeting held on November 8th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Dan. Any questions or comments on those? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Don't think we have any business arising from previous meetings, so we're on to items for consideration. Any items for consideration you'd like to pull out for further discussion? Steve?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I have a couple here. 2B on page 181. That's the, excuse me, the Sobeys.
Okay.
6A on page 212. That's lottery licensing.
Okay.
And then 6E, the nomination of John Sapolis. I think I pronounced his name correctly. That's on 254. And then finally 7B on page 272, and that's the piece from Randy Pettipies.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody have others they'd like pulled? Lisa, go ahead. You're muted, Lisa.
Sorry, I think we should pull 3B.
Okay, that's the shop local Saturday. Any others?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. All right, so that's just to go over it again. We have 2B, 3B, 6A, and E, and 7B.
Correct.
Okay, last call for any others. Okay, then we have a recommendation here that all items listed under items for consideration on the November 22nd, 2021 council agenda, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved and the recommendations therein be adopted. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Steve. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we'll go back to 2B. So we recommend this in regard to the Sobeys rezoning. The recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the planning report prepared by Curtis Marshall, Manager of Development Planning, County of Wellington, dated November 17th, 2021, regarding the zoning bylaw amendment, Sobeys ZBA 10-21, 437 to 445, and 503 to 515 Main Street, Mount Forest, Township of Wellington North. Final recommendation report. I get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa. Okay, we'll open the floor for discussion. Go ahead, Steve.
And through you, Mayor Lennox, I think this is a great report. It looks really fantastic. It's you know, it looks like it's needed up there. The catch is for me, and I think Dan will probably agree with me, is the movement of traffic. And I see in the report that there might be signalization put at this intersection, Curtis. So, and it's been, I think if I read it right, it has been sent to the MTO. So what are the next steps and how long will it take, do you think, for the MTO to get back to us to see if this if this plan works? And if that does not work, then where are we? And then where is Sobeys in this development?
Curtis?
Thank you. Through Mayor Lennox. Yes, so as outlined in the report, we have received a revised traffic study that has identified an existing need for signalization at the intersection. And they've indicated as well that the addition of the grocery store would further add to the further warrant for the signalization. So we have sent this report to the MTO, and they are reviewing it, and staff did follow up last week as well to touch base with them, and they've not been able to give us a commitment on how long they would need ultimately to review it. Now, in terms of, as I've discussed in the report, if ultimately the MTO did not approve signalization of the intersection, the township has several options going forward, and ultimately at the end of the day, the site plan application will iron out all the final technical details, and this approval is needed from the township. So in this case that a signalization wasn't approved by the MTO, Sobeys would need to come up with a revised site plan to the township's satisfaction. And also to further secure things for the township, I'm recommending that a holding provision be placed on the bylaw. And what this would do is set out the prerequisites that would need to be met prior to the application proceeding to a building permit and to construction. And this building, or this holding provision, basically, as I've outlined, I can just briefly go over the criteria, but we would want, council would need to be satisfied that servicing is available for the site, that stormwater management issues have been addressed, site plan approval has been attained, and any required development agreements or site plan agreements have been entered into with the township. And then finally, that an entrance design, including any proposed intersection and road improvements, has been provided to the satisfaction of the township. So we feel, or we're recommending the inclusion of the holding provision, as it will provide clarity by outlining required prerequisites that would need to be met in order for the development to proceed.
Just as a reminder, if you have any questions, I can move the Sobeys planner into the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Curtis.
Mike?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox, maybe just a little further in terms of the traffic concerns. Obviously, staff heard those concerns as well as Sobeys. So I want to acknowledge that they've come forward and acknowledge that, yeah, that is an issue that they want to work with us and with the MTO in terms of addressing. So we have submitted to the MTO and are waiting comments back from them. We're not sure what those will necessarily look like. In addition to that, the mayor and I have requested a delegation with the Minister of Transportation at the upcoming Roma conference as well, knowing that, you know, connecting links and traffic calming measures, those type of things are things that we're going to be dealing with as our community continues to grow throughout. So we want to continue that conversation and that relationship with the MTO. But I did want to acknowledge that, you know, Sobeys has heard the concerns that were raised by council and by members of the public around traffic in the area, and have been willing to work with us and acknowledge the need for the hold. We've also had conversations with them about a memorandum of understanding or some form of agreement as it relates to what it would look like if and when the signalization is given approval by the MTO from a cost sharing standpoint, all of those things. So there's been lots of work around this happening in the background. And I think that's why we as a staff, Curtis leading the way with his report, are comfortable with bringing forward the zoning bylaw piece at this point, because we're comfortable, and Sobeys has made it clear they're willing to work with us around the traffic concerns that were identified. So we want to keep the project moving. As Councillor McCabe said, it's a great project. The site itself, what they're proposing is it's quite exciting for that end of town. But yeah, we want to make sure all the checks and balances are in place so that for the most part, when it's here, that everybody's happy with what the end product is, including that intersection. So I just wanted to provide a little bit more context.
Thanks, Mike. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, and I should echo what you said, Mike, as well. It's nice when Sobeys has heard the concern, not just of the council, but of I think of the general public that will be using their store up there if and when it goes through. And yeah, to put their pressure or their backing behind having signal lights or signalization at that intersection, I think that that certainly goes a long way and aligns with us and with what the community needs as well. So I'd like to thank them for that as well.
Okay, other questions, comments? Go ahead, Dan.
I'm happy with the site plan, the way it looks, the revised plan. I hope that the submission to the MTO, everything goes okay, and I'm happy to see that Sobeys and the township and hopefully the MTO can work together to try to maybe reduce or reduce the congestion and enhance the traffic movement in that area. So no, it looks good, and I'm glad to see, and everybody's working together to try to get it get this pulled together.
Other questions, comments? So I've got a couple of process questions. I'm probably going to direct them mostly at you, Curtis. So we're the MTO comments are pending, but that I just want to make sure that should not interfere with our approving of this zoning bylaw amendment or not.
No, we're comfortable, staff's comfortable bringing forward the draft bylaw for council tonight. And as Mike probably laid out, maybe better than I am right now, that we're comfortable with the use being introduced on the site, and that the final details related to traffic will come out through the MTO review and the site plan approval.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had, you referenced the holding provision on this site, and I guess does that mean it would need to come back before council to release that holding provision, or will it just be automatic once certain conditions are met?
So the process works that it will need to come back to council, however, just for a bylaw to lift it. There is no public meeting or appeal period. We'd have to notify those affected, and that would be the owners, who would be Sobeys. So it is fairly routine. We'd expect that most likely it would come back with the site plan approval together on the same night for consideration.
Okay. Yeah, I was just concerned, I know staff work really hard with the development applications to try to make them move as quickly as possible. I get concerned sometimes if we're the holdup around the council table, and certainly I don't think any of us want to hold up this project. We just want to see it to the appropriate conclusion. So just want to make sure I understood that clearly. And I guess the only other comment I had was, and I know that it's probably maybe more suited to the site plan discussions, but I know there's some discussion about using township owned right of way onto Industrial Drive for this site as well. And just wondering whether there's any discussions been had at this point around perhaps fencing or something along that right of way to make sure that there is an ambulance station right beside that land, and we certainly don't want to do anything to interfere with the ambulance traffic coming and going. So I just wondered whether that had been part of the discussions at this point.
At this point, that's not, we haven't got into that level of detail on that block, but those are certainly good suggestions, and we will be considering them, how that block is developed and as part of the site plan going forward.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think I have anything further. Anybody? Mike, go ahead.
Mayor Lennox, at your discretion, obviously as the chair, but you may want to allow Eric representing the applicant in, just if he had any comments as it relates to the zoning bylaw itself or the site plan provision, or maybe he wanted to acknowledge what a great idea you just had around the fencing for the access off of Industrial Drive.
Thanks for that shout out, Mike. Eric, are you with us?
I'm just moving him into the meeting right now.
Okay.
So he's here, he's on mute, and his camera's not turned on yet.
Yeah, just bear with me for a second. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, welcome, Eric. And,
Thank you.
And even though Mike, set you up, you don't have to fall for that.
Okay, so we did review the staff report and the draft zoning bylaw with our client, and they're in agreement with that. And as was stated, we took some, like BA Group, the Sobeys traffic consultant, took the updated traffic counts for May and ran the analysis, and the signal are warranted under existing conditions. So they had updated that in their report using the updated traffic data from May of this year. And so Sobeys willing to work with the township and to address the issues. And I guess one of the things too is in terms of the access off of Industrial Drive, right now what they're showing is it's a little bit away from the ambulance, but they're looking at sort of Mennonite horse and buggy access, and you can see that in the site plan that's on appended to the staff report, I think on page 3 of the staff report. And so that's the intent, and just to eliminate the potential for cut through traffic. So it'll be signed and for horse and buggy only. And I guess too, just to add, the Sobeys has been in discussions with Waste Management, the neighboring property, and they've come to an agreement for the conveyance of stormwater management through the site as well. And I guess I'm available to answer any other questions that you may have.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Eric? Thank you, Eric, for your input.
None here.
Steve, did I see your hand up? No? Okay. I guess you're getting off the hook easily, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any final discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we'll move on to 3B. This is EDO report in regard to the Shop Local Sidewalk Saturday. And we have the recommendation that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report EDO 2021-30 being an update on the Wellington North Shop Local Sidewalk Saturday program. And further, the council, in partnership with the Chambers of Commerce and Business Improvement Associations, will continue to support this program in 2022 by supporting the closure of George Street in Arthur and Main Street in Mount Forest on the following Saturdays. George Street in Arthur on July 2nd for the Arthur 150th celebrations and August 7th, and Main Street, Mount Forest, July 16th, to coincide with the fireworks festival, if it's going to happen, and August 14th. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa, and we'll open the floor for discussion. Lisa?
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Well, first of all, I'm fully supportive of this. I think the Shop Local program has been colossally successful, sorry. And something good that's actually come out of COVID-19 is that these have been successful events. But I'm just looking for some clarification from Dale, if he's on here, which I think he is, around the date. The to be determined date with the fireworks festival. Dale, like, are we looking to hold it at the same time as the fireworks festival if it occurs? I'm pretty sure it will, but
yeah, through you, Marlenix. Yeah, so the thinking is that the third Saturday will be the fireworks festival, so we will need to close Main Street for the fireworks festival. And we may consider closing other streets like King Street or something like that for the actual Shop Local activities. But we probably would not be able to hold the Shop Local on Main Street if they move forward with a car show like they have in the past. But that would be a weekend for a big celebration.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. After a day like today, it makes it nice to look forward to a summer Saturday on Main Street. So thanks for that, Dale.
Yep.
I'm just in that same vein. I'm looking forward to this Saturday as well. So should be good.
Okay. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 6A. This is a report in regard to lottery licensing, and we have a recommendation that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report CLK 2021-29 being report on lottery licensing, and further the council direct staff to issue correspondence to all service groups who have held lottery licenses in the past 24 months that lottery funds may not be used for municipal capital facilities pursuant to the Alcohol and Gaming Authority rules. And further, that service groups be encouraged to draft their own letters to their member of provincial parliament using the template provided on their own version. And further, that the clerk forward this resolution and draft MPP letter to our member of parliament, as well as the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, and the member municipalities and the AGCO. I get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa. And with that, I'll open the floor for discussion. Steve, go ahead.
I know we talked about this at good length, and it just seems very archaic in the rules that the province or the Attorney General lays out. So I guess my question is, the last time Randy wrote was back in 2015. There's been a change of government, obviously, since then, and the party that he is in is now the ruling government. I wonder if we can get him to write another letter to his fellow party member, and if there is any appetite to sit or have another discussion with the Attorney General at the upcoming Roma, or if maybe, excuse me, maybe the cutoff for requesting meetings has been closed. I can't remember the exact date for that, but just wondering if we can push this now that he's actually, or the Randy's party is the one in power, and his letter was very well constructed, and I think the very last question in his letter to the then sitting Attorney General could be asked of the sitting Attorney General today.
Yeah, I think the motion does anticipate a letter to our MPP, so hopefully he will take up that cause as well.
Good.
Other questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 6E. This is in regard to the risk management official report. And we have a recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report RMO 2021-001, and further that the council support the nomination of Mr. John Sapoulis as the municipal representative for Wellington County, Halton Region, Dufferin County, and Grey County on the Lake Erie Source Protection Committee. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Dan, seconded by Steve. And with that, I'll open the floor for questions or comments. Go ahead, Steve. You're muted, Steve.
Sorry about that. I
Do
just
over.
broke my my string. Damn. I think I saw Kyle on earlier. I don't know if he's. Sorry, I just saw you there. Sorry, I see you there now, Kyle. So I read all of this, and it's all great. And I think John he's been doing it since 2017. I think it's great that he can still continue on. So what does he really do?
Certainly, yeah. Through you, Mayor Lennox. The Source Protection Committee members represent the municipalities and serve as a conduit if there's any concerns that need to be brought up at the Source Protection Committee table. So the committee itself is responsible for they don't approve, but they have to accept any changes or amendments to the source protection plans or the assessment reports, as well as the technical reports. And then they recommend that to the GRCA board for submission to the minister for approval, and the ministry approves it. So all the members are sort of part of that decision process. They're a board of the GRCA, really. Sorry, committee of the GRCA. So Councillor Sapoulis's role is to represent our municipalities, and if there are any concerns from council or from staff, then we would pass them over to Councillor Sapoulis to raise at the committee. And we have 5 members in our various source protection committees, and I'm always in contact with them ahead of meetings to identify if we do have any concerns that need to be raised at the meetings.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Kyle.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to 7B. This is in news release from Randy Pedepiece, and the recommendation is as follows: that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North received the news release dated November 17th, 2021 from Randy Pedepiece, MPP, Perth Wellington, regarding decision to not seek re-election. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. And questions, comments? Steve, go ahead.
Just a quick couple of comments. It's bittersweet that he's going to be leaving us. I think he's done well for Perth Wellington, and I was wondering, do we have to recommend a letter from council thanking him for his service and thanking him for representing our township, or what's the protocol for that? I see Karen has come off mute.
It would just be a direction to staff, and we would draft a letter for the mayor to sign on behalf of council.
Alrighty.
Congratulatory letter and
Yeah,
thanking him for his service.
yeah, and welcoming into his retirement, so.
Okay.
That was all that I had for that, and thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Any notice of motion this evening? Okay, not seeing any. We'll move on to community group meeting program reports. Anybody have anything they'd like to report on in that regard? Lisa, go ahead.
Mute. So I had Arthur BIA, Arthur Chamber, and Mount Forest Chamber meetings last week. So the Arthur BIA was their annual general meeting. Just an update on a couple of maybe key things. They voted to kind of to keep the levy the same. They have committed dollars. Everyone is excited, both the Arthur Chamber and the Arthur BIA, about the anniversary of Arthur's 150. So there has been some money set aside for that. But something that kind of came out of, I guess, all three meetings between the Mount Forest Chamber, the Arthur Chamber, and the Arthur BIA is that now, I guess, I think there was one caveat to figure out how the employment relationship kind of all works. But the Mount Forest Chamber's current administrator, Stacy Stevenson, has been hired to work as the administrator for the Arthur Chamber, and will be working, you know, kind of pending the employment, them figuring out the employment relationship with the Arthur BIA as well. Which should kind of deal with some of the communication hurdles that we've had between the two. And as far as all three, help with some collaboration across the entire platform and bring the good stuff that happens in Mount Forest, the great stuff that happens in Arthur, and exchange things back and forth. So there's a lot of talk about collaboration going on. It's a tall order working for 3 boards of directors, but I'm committed to helping Stacy, and I think we all are in any way we can to see her move forward. Anyone who hasn't met Stacy, she grew up in Kenilworth, currently lives in Arthur. She was my babysitter a long time ago, so I did trust her with my kids. So she's responsible, and looking forward to working with her across all 3.
Thanks, Lisa. Look forward to that challenging position for Stacy and with what she can bring to it. So, Steve, I think I saw your hand up as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say congratulations to Stacy as well. I mean, she comes from the capital of Wellington North, so that's always nice to have representation there. But all kidding aside, it'll be nice to have a nice continuity between Arthur and Mount Forest for this position, and I think it just kind of makes sense. And I know they're going to be able to work together, and Stacy will be able to serve both very, very well. So congratulations to her as well.
Okay. Anything else anyone would like to report on?
I did have an SBCA meeting today. It was just a review of a development that's possible just in plugging shores. But other than that, the budget has or will be going out to all the municipalities if it hasn't been received already. And I know Adam had alluded to that as well. And I know it hasn't been out yet. So we don't know our own Wellington North contribution to the SBCA, but it will soon be known.
Just on Conservation Authority, Steve, I had a question. you know, with the new conservation authority legislation, have you been having discussions at the board about what things are considered core services and what things are not core services, and how to present that to local municipalities?
We're trying. To be honest, we have had one brief meeting on it. Jennifer, I believe, has sent out a number of letters about the different changes to the Conservation Act. And we're, as a board, trying to figure that out as well, and how best to figure out what are our core, what's our core business and what isn't, and when to know to get out of the way of things that are going on in our conservation watershed as well. So there'll be more coming out on that, Mayor Lennox, for sure.
Yeah, I know that there's some talk about, you know, consultation and so on, but I have to admit to being a little bit, what's the word? Just not really feeling like I know what the shape of the landscape is yet to be able to comment on it. So
I suggest you're not alone.
So looking forward to you know, what you guys can provide. I think there will be some communication needed around some of it too before we get to decision times at this table.
Yes, and with that, or bearing that in mind, Mayor Lennox, Jennifer Stevens, the general manager for the SVCA, will or has been invited to address our council when we talk about the budget from the SVCA as well. So she'll hopefully have some more answers for you on the new regs and what that means for the SVCA and what it means for our municipalities as a member of that.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Did you anybody else have any others community group meeting things to report on? I would just comment that I attended the Christmas tree lighting in Mount Forest there a week or so ago on Friday night. And it's nice to see the kind of community support for something like that. There was a fair crowd came to see the tree lighting. MP Nader and myself got to plug the electricity in, but yeah, it's good to see the community out and about and participating in those types of things as well. So anybody have anything else? Okay, and we'll move on to bylaws. So we just have the one bylaw here. This is in regard to the Sobeys rezoning. And we have the recommendation here that bylaw number 108-21 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Dan. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Brings us to our confirming bylaw. Excuse me. And the recommendation is that bylaw number 109-21 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North at its regular meeting held on November 22nd, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And that brings us, before I adjourn, I just draw your attention to the notices and so on in your agenda package. There's some interesting things coming up here in the next little while, of course. Christmas carols this Friday at the Arthur Cenotaph, along with the Christmas tree lighting. The Arthur Christmas Market coming up this Saturday in Arthur from 9 till 3 in the municipal parking lot in Frederick Street West. The Arthur Optimistic Santa Claus Parade on Saturday. Mount Forest Lions Drive-Through Santa Claus Parade on December 3rd. Next Rec Parks and Leisure Committee on the 7th, and our next council meeting on the 13th. Cultural Roundtable on the December the 16th, and the holiday administrative office closure from December 24th to January 4th.
Mayor, and Mike had his hand up there, sorry.
Mike?
I think Karen was going to do the same. Karen, are we trying to confirm the date for the special meeting around the development charges? I think
Yes.
we've got two alternatives right now.
The 25th or the 30th, and unfortunately, Dan, it's looking like the 30th is the meeting that the majority of council are good with. I'm still waiting to hear from Councillor Burke.
What time is the meeting?
2 o'clock.
Okay.
As soon as we,
If it is the 30th, that's okay. I've got another commitment. I think it's in the morning. So if it's the 30th at 2 o'clock, I'll try to make it. So that's fine.
as soon as I
Appreciate
hear
that.
from Councillor Burke, we will get the notice of I'll get notice out to council and staff, but also we'll get notice up on the website. So the public has notice as well.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Is
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
there any, I haven't heard, but is council's not doing anything for the parades? Well, nothing, the Mount Forest parade, just to drive through one, same as last year, but we're not committing to the Arthur parade at all.
Yeah, I
I don't
didn't have
know.
any particular plans. It's kind of one of those difficult situations.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fine. I just wasn't sure whether, wasn't sure all you guys were gonna show up and I'd forget, so.
Well, if somebody's got a good plan, I'm willing to listen, but I don't have one at this stage.
No, okay, well, we'll just go down and watch it then.
Okay. All right, that brings us to adjournment. So I have a recommendation here that the regular council meeting of November 22nd, 2021 be adjourned at 8:41 p.m. Moved by Steve, seconded by Dan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for nice, smooth meeting.
Thanks,
Have a good-
everyone. Have a
have a good
great
evening.
weekend. Stay safe.
Yeah, have a good evening.
Bye now.